Welcome to Southern Fried Baseball, brought to you by College Baseball Central, bringing you 90 feet closer to the greatest show on dirt. Here are your hosts.
Welcome back, college baseball fans. We have a week 2 recap on deck for you. Lots of good happened in the SEC. One not so good for one of those teams. One mild overreaction, if you will, for the South Carolina fans. It's Jake and Nick back here talking SEC ball. Nick, how are we doing this weekend?
Doing well. I mean, obviously there were some big storylines to talk about today, so we'll get into that.
Let's talk about the team that I think won the weekend more than anybody else. The LSU Tigers go down into Jacksonville and just roll through that weekend over on D1 baseball. I watched that UCF game on Sunday and came away thoroughly impressed. What did you think of LSU?
So we'll get to this later. I think Auburn was my most impressive of the weekend. Personally, I think they made the biggest statement. LSU kind of just took care of business as usual. I would say what I took from it is I'm still worried about the starting pitching. William Schmidt obviously handled things on Sunday, looked great. And that's a very good sign because he was probably the worst of the three last week. But yeah, I mean, Kason Evans, another not so good outing. So we'll kind of see. The starting pitching I have issues with. What I don't have issues with is this offense is just absolutely rolling. It seems like it's somebody different every day that has a huge game. Kade Arambide, I think, had probably the best weekend overall. He didn't make the most noise just because his home runs and his 2 home runs, I think he hit 500 if I saw that right. So yeah, it was a very good weekend for the LSU offense. But yeah, I mean, they were big favorites in all 3 games as they should have been. So I think they took care of business. And yeah, like I said, outside of the starting pitching, questions are pretty much answered.
Yeah, I think for me, the thing that I came away most impressed was just how complimentary a lot of the coaches were talking about LSU. Their ability to cover the plate, choke up with 2 strikes, like it's a very mature offense. And I think the scariest thing for me is I think that offense still has kind of another gear, like that they didn't really play like the best, if they will, on offense, and they still put up nearly double digits in every single game. So I think that's the scariest thing for me is I feel like we're still kind of getting into it. We're still figuring out a lot of this team. They still don't have Chris Stanfield. So it feels like that, as a lot of this stuff gets figured out, LSU just feels like a meat grinder. And I wanted to ask you this because I saw it from one of the LSU fan pages. If you had to pick 3 people in the LSU lineup to get the final 3 outs of the games, like who are the 3 that you would pick? Like I feel like there's not really like a ton of weaknesses in this lineup or anybody that you can kind of say is going to be a cog in the machine down at the bottom of the order as, Caraway, who hit 3 hole for Oregon State most last year, hits in the 9 hole. I mean, it's just an insanely deep lineup for me.
Yeah, I mean, Caraway is still one of them for me, just because of the inconsistencies. I feel like he has more swing and miss than most other people in the lineup. I think, and like obviously, if I was trying to get people out, that's how I would go about it. I still have a question about Braden Simpson. It was nice to be able to see, and we even talked about this on Thursday. Is like who would take over that outfield spot, and they put him in left field and had Dardar at second. So that was encouraging, that showing and proving that he can play multiple positions when people are kind of out of the lineup. But yeah, it's got to be them, and like it's obviously not Curiel, it's not Jake Brown right now. I'm not touching him. Zach York, it depends on the situation. Zach York, obviously a ton of swing and miss too, so that could be another candidate just because of the swing and miss potential.
Yeah, I think the thing for me is the same thing there was at Grand Canyon. When he's hot, he's extremely hot. And when he's not, he tends to kind of overpull some stuff. So that'll be the interesting thing, just to see how kind of SEC teams pitch him, play him, field him. Because, again, we have a big sample size on him and what he does. But we're starting to kind of see some nicknames come about this LSU team. I saw Dardar referred to as the Fossil on Instagram, which might be one of my favorite nicknames that I've heard. But vibes are at an all-time high, if you will, at LSU. I mean, they've won the national championship twice under Jay Johnson, but they've never started as well as they have this year. It always seems like they go into a tournament. I know that we had Iowa where they got wrecked a few years ago. They lost to Omaha early. Like, this team just feels like they're rolling. And, like, that's the scary part is LSU always kind of picks it up down the stretch. And if this is how good they are now, how are they going to pick it up down the stretch?
Yeah, I mean, obviously only time will tell. It's still 3 games against Milwaukee and then Nichols, and then obviously they look good this weekend. But that's also, we talked about Milwaukee got beat 20-3.
Well, hold on.
Duke.
There was one game that you missed in there. They played Kent.
Oh, yeah, Kent State. Yeah. I didn't even see. Yeah. They played Kent State. Gave up 7 runs at Kent State. This is another pitching issue, but scored 10. Yeah, I mean, like I said, obviously LSU is one of the top. They're a top 5 team in the country. There's no doubt about that. That part's pretty much settled so far.
Yeah, 100%. The other team that really challenged themselves this weekend, the Auburn Tigers, go into Globe Life. They beat Kansas State, Florida State, and Louisville. I'm going to be honest with you. This felt like a really easy side of the bracket looking back at it. I mean, Louisville's had all their struggles. Florida State looked really, really bad as they went 1-2 on the weekend. Obviously, that gritty game on Friday night against Kansas State. But Auburn brought the bats with them this weekend. I mean, they looked really, really talented at the plate. They had a really, I think, mature approach. And again, they just outclassed Louisville. Like, I watched that game on Sunday. It just looked like these were 2 teams in different stratospheres, in my opinion.
Yeah, from an offensive, I guess I'll say from a depth perspective.
Yes,
it's kind of
from a lineup depth perspective.
Yeah, because Louisville, they put up 6, but you were only really worried about Louisville scoring when it was the top of the order, and obviously that's who did all the scoring for him. Tag Davis kind of took care of it. He had 3 or 4 of their RBIs out of the 6. But yeah, we talked about we wanted to see the offense step up, and could the pitching staff put together 2 straight good weekends, and they did. Jake Marciano, if he keeps throwing like this, if they have a real Friday night ace, that kind of changes everything for them. Like they're another team that's in that kind of right now 5 to 10 range in the country. And if they have a true Friday night ace followed by guys on Saturday and Sunday that can keep the game within reach and let the offense do damage, then yeah, this is another very good team. This is a top 3 or 4 team in the SEC.
I think the thing for me is that they started Brandon McCrane in the 4 hole. If you remember, he's kind of one that's playing just because Rembert's been banged up. He had a tremendous weekend. Again, I watched that Louisville game really, really close. He had 2 hits. That's some really competitive at bats. So that's the thing is, as they kind of get some of these guys back from injury, what they kind of do. Because again, we saw it last year with Butch Thompson, where with the staff having so many issues and really kind of coming through, the lineup I think has like issues in a good sense on who they're going to play. It's a complete 180 from me. And again, I think Auburn played like one of the best teams in the SEC this weekend. Like, if they play like this, like they're going to be tough to beat 2 of 3, in my opinion.
Yeah, it felt like that and I think part of it was because of the offensive expectations we had. Like, this was one of the few teams, at least for me personally, that it felt like I knew the lineup going in opening day, where it's like, okay, we know who they brought back. We know who they brought in. This is going to be their lineup. And it didn't look great week 1. So I think a lot of it was Butch Thompson going like, okay, like, let's see if we can switch some things up a bit, and maybe some things will work out differently, or maybe things will like gel better if he hits in the 4 hole instead of the 8, and like just kind of move some things around. And clearly it did. And even if it's part of, you're just like, guys need to be woken up and like, hey, the season has started. Like Chase Fralick was one who kind of limped through weekend 1, looked like himself again this weekend. So he was good. Missing Rembert. Bub Terrell was all over the place. I think he had 3 or 4 stolen bases this weekend. So yeah, he
had a couple of really clutch singles too.
And those too, yeah.
That was one thing too. When I was following along on Twitter, I felt like every single highlight was Bub Terrell. Yeah,
it really was. So the offense kind of did its thing, and then we mentioned the pitching staff, and it's also once Christian Chatterton and Andres Alvarez kind of, I hate to say the word figured out, but they need to figure it out because those are 2 of their more talented arms. They just aren't throwing fantastic yet. This will be a very, very good team come when it's like May, June.
I really liked Chatterton kind of in that Sunday bullpen role. I know that he threw 2 scoreless innings there at the back end. That's another one where we'll talk about it a little bit with Texas about the luxury of the staff, but to have the luxury to go to somebody like that on a Sunday to
Yeah.
get him innings, I think that's a really, really scary thing. Now let's switch gears to the two teams that were probably the most disappointing. Tennessee Volunteers dropped 2 of 3 to Kent State. They needed a walk-off to win Friday. I know that I was very low on Tennessee, and I don't want to do an I told you so, but I feel like a lot of the issues behind the scenes about this team lacking a leader, lacking kind of a consistency to kind of level the playing field, really kind of came to fruition for me. I know that it's early. It's just one weekend. Kent State's a really good team. But do you kind of see a little bit of the signs of maybe getting it unraveled a little bit?
No, I think that's completely. I think that's a little off base. I would say we talked about it, and even though I was high on them, I said they'd probably start out slow. I mean, these are all mostly sophomores that are playing, and like these are all young guys outside of 2 starters, basically in Reese Chapman, and Henry Ford. They're a young team, and this was to be expected. Like they was going to get slow out of the gate. What we didn't kind of see was it is a little bit of the offense struggling. The pitching staff has been lights out, or at least from the starting standpoint, have been extremely, extremely good. Those will be there every weekend, and they're going to keep them in every game. The Sunday got out of control and the only thing that it was the first time that I probably thought that Frank and Tony would have probably done something a little bit different is when they're in that tough situation in I believe it was the 6th inning, when it was 1st and 2nd, nobody out, game was still tied. They brought in a true freshman who had only thrown once on the season so far. He came in and threw 11 straight balls. One of those was a hit by pitch. And so then kind of things unraveled a bit. So, and this is also a team that made 3 errors after leading the country in fielding percentage coming into the weekend. So I think those are just kind of unforced things. I'm not worried, especially like as a Tennessee fan. It's one of those it's an early season. Like, is it disappointing? Absolutely. But I would say I was shocked with how good Kent State looked. And it kind of made their win against Southeastern Louisiana look good. It made the 3-run loss to LSU look good. But yeah, it was the only thing I would say. I think the timely hitting needs to be better. They had a ton of guys on base. I know they were like 2 for 13, I think, on Sunday with runners in scoring position or runners on base. So that part will have to change. But what we expected, I think, is kind of like we expected a slow start, or at least I expected a slow start. Now, do I expect them to lose at Kent State? No, but it's not like the end of the world.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not the end of the world that they lose a series like this. I don't think it's ready to hit the panic button for me, but Henry Ford has been as good as advertised. I know he was kind of a ton of their offense this weekend, but I think they got to get more from Ariel Antigua and Manny Marin up the middle.
I don't know if Ariel Antigua is going to play much more. I think that's Tyler Wyatt's going to take over, and he like that guy. And it was one of those.
He's been on. He's been. Do you think he takes over though for Manny Marin? And
Manny Marin's the better defender and better hitter. That's why Manny. He's been playing short. And they moved Antigua to second because Marin beat Antigua out for that shortstop position throughout the fall and the spring. And so, no, it'll be him. And that's why, like, Wyatt started at second base for Antigua on Sunday.
What do you think about Levi Clark's at-bats? I know he's hitting under 200. He's another guy that I think is a little bit too talented. Is it just a mental thing? Is it a slow start? Is it something where you maybe move him down into the lineup so you can see kind of some different pitches? What do you think the solution is with Levi Clark?
Yeah, he's one of those two where it's like when he's hot, he's hot. When he's cold, he can be as cold as anybody. And it's sort of his swing path. The barrel is not in the zone very long. It's extremely whippy. What I am afraid of this year, and I mentioned it on a show in the fall I did for like a Tennessee thing, was I worried, and that's what it kind of looks like. If you remember Blake Burke sophomore year, is kind of what it feels like, where he kind of lit the world on fire as a freshman and I think he had 12 home runs, like 98 at bats as a freshman. And Levi Clark was like doing that last year. It feels a little bit like that. He's so streaky, but yeah. And there are questions about like, could you move him down the lineup? Absolutely. I think Tyler Wyatt has shown he can be that kind of 3 or 4 hole hitter. Reese Chapman is leading the team in RBIs right now. He could be that 4 or 5 hole hitter. So yeah, moving Levi Clark down until he heats up wouldn't be a huge concern.
Yeah, that's the thing for me is I think just kind of finding the pieces. And I know for Elander, I know it's only his second week being a head coach, but these are the kind of things that you really do have to kind of learn on the fly that I think Tony was so great at was one, just kind of settling everybody down when they have weekends like this. And then two, kind of pulling the right levers so Levi Clark still feels like he's contributing without feeling like the staff's given up on him. That's the other thing that I think is a really kind of underrated thing that Tony V was good at. So I think that that's what Elander really has to learn between now and this time next Monday is how do you manage this team? Because again, they play UCLA, they play Virginia Tech, who only has one loss, and like it could very easily be
Arizona State, who's also undefeated. Yeah,
it could very, and they play Arizona State earlier in the weekend. It could very easily be a 1-2 weekend or a 0-3 weekend, and everybody's kind of panicking because it's back-to-back weekend losses. I think that that's the thing for me is I'm not ready to say that they're 2025 A&M. I know a lot of people have kind of made that comparison, but I mean, it was a tournament early that kind of made everybody check out that A&M wasn't as good as everybody thought they were going to be. So also, there is a lot of similarities.
A&M was preseason ranked once first, and I think Tennessee was picked to finish 7th in the SEC. So I still think that comparison's I can't see that comparison being made.
Also, that A&M team had a lot more talent than Tennessee on paper. That's the other thing.
Well, maybe. I mean
they had level. I mean, like especially for what it's doing this year. That's the thing that I think really scares me about this Tennessee team. Is even if Tony V was there, I don't think that this is like a top 5 SEC team. And now they don't have kind of the magic of Tony V or getting them to play up. I think that's the one thing is I think Tennessee fans need to kind of temper expectations. And I think that, losing to a 3-0 quality opponent like Kent State is something that an SEC team in kind of that 10 to 12 range does. And I know a lot of Tennessee fans kind of think that they should be in the top 5. That's the one thing for me is I think it's not an elite Tennessee team like we've seen in the past 5 years.
I mean, it's back-to-back number 1 recruited classes that are playing right now. But like I said, it's because they're young. Talent is obviously there. They're projected to get 2 first-rounders this year. I mean, obviously one's a pitcher, one's a hitter. So that part is different. I think where it was so that part is different. But yeah, it's still extremely talented. And it does feel like, okay, maybe this is just it's obviously not giving up on the year, but like next year is like even in Tony V's like what his plan was in the fall was like next year is like the year when it's like you have back-to-back number 1 high school recruiting classes and now they're freshmen, sophomores, and those guys are sophomores, juniors. Was supposed to be the killer year anyways. So it's obviously not giving up on this year, but next year was always we're winning another championship.
Yeah, that's the one thing though is if Tennessee fans are going to let that have like a quote unquote down year, because a down year in Tony V was like last year where they finished 7th and went to a super regional.
Yeah, well, that's exactly.
Let's move on to a team that probably has a complete 180 of fan expectations. The South Carolina Gamecocks. They had their Freedom Classic this weekend as they hosted Army, Navy, and Air Force. Army beat them on Friday before they bounced back to beat Navy and Air Force. I should say Army has a really good Friday guy. They really gave Clemson a lot of fits. I thought Navy was the best of those 3 teams, and South Carolina just pounded them on Saturday. We'll talk about it more on Thursday about what it means for South Carolina, but this feels like a program that's just teetering on the brink of everything going wrong.
Yeah, and a lot of it is it does feel like compared to like when we were talking about how Tennessee had a rough weekend, it still isn't like it's not from a social media standpoint where it is complete. Like it seems like South Carolina fans have just given up and like they're just ready to move on to next year because they're complaining about every sport being down. Losing to Army just felt like almost like the last straw, even though they did bounce back and win the next 2. It just seems like one of those. It is tough because they feel like under Ray Tanner winning back-to-back championships, and it just like you want to get back there, and it just doesn't seem like they're anywhere close to that point.
No, and I'll read something from one of the Army players because I asked him what was better, Founders or Clemson. He said Founders for stadium, Clemson for atmosphere. I think that
1,000% agree with that.
I think that's the most embarrassing part to me is like I remember getting in like Twitter battles with like the South Carolina fans, and now like I don't see any of them. Like they just don't care, which I think is the most pathetic thing about South Carolina in the last 5 or 6 years is that it was a diehard fan base, and it's just a shell of itself. And they'll do the Clemson thing where they'll do a home, neutral, and then road. If Clemson sweeps them, it might be instantly time to pull the plug on the Mainieri thing because they spent a lot of money. It's early, but I think the fan base would check out if they get swept.
I mean, I think they get swept because it's also you're getting the home game is Friday, which means you're also getting Aiden Kanak on Friday as well. I don't see South Carolina scoring enough personally off of him to be able to win that one, and then you're neutral, and then you're at Clemson on Sunday. So they will. I think they'll be lucky to steal one, but yeah, it's kind of grim. I know most of the time, and you talk about the South Carolina social media stuff on Twitter and everything. Now it's most that we hear from South Carolina is our guy Ron Burgundy over there who just posts the sad gifs and how he's crying. So it's very relatable. So it's a struggle right now for them, and it does honestly feel like and it's weird to say, but it feels like they're just so over it now that they don't care as much as they usually do.
Yeah, and it really is sad. Let's switch gears into a more positive note. Liam Peterson shoved on Friday night against Kennesaw State as Florida sweeps them in all 3 games. I called it. I knew he was going to have a bounce back game. It seems like, I guess Sully needs to be in the dugout for all of his starts, and he'll pitch all right.
Yeah, I mean, Q's taking credit for giving Liam Peterson some bulletin board material. Clearly, he needed it. I mean, it looked a lot better. And the Kennesaw State offense is not bad either. We kind of talked about that coming into the weekend, and we saw that when they scored 9 on Sunday. And Aiden King is Aiden King again, dude. That guy is
the king. Yeah,
that guy is very,
fitting
very
last
good.
name.
Yeah, that guy is very, very good. And the offense answered questions again. Cade Kurland, didn't even play, I believe, Saturday or Sunday, or maybe just Sunday, as he's still nursing some soft tissue stuff. But this offense is very good. Seems to be clicking, and unfortunately, we're not going to find out. Like FIU's okay. The FIU offense looked good.
They play Miami this weekend.
Yeah, but they have. I was saying they have FIU on Tuesday, Wednesday, and then they get a Miami offense that looks very dangerous. So that'll be interesting to see how Peterson and King look next week, and we'll get a much more realistic look of what the starting rotation should look like. Let me pull up
the Miami stats just to kind of look ahead, because I almost didn't believe it, but 144 runs in 9 games is the most in Miami school history. 30 runs is tied for the second most in a single game. 9 homers ties a team record. 5 homers in an inning, team record. Cavez is the second Miami Hurricane to hit 2 homers in 1 inning. Yeah. So, I mean, it's just like it's going to be a grind, I think.
Well, poor Lafayette didn't have the run rule on, so they had to play the whole 9 innings on Sunday to get to 30. I mean, they scored 4 in the 8th, 4 in this. It's just that was a rough one, but. Whew.
I mean, I think that's going to be the one that there's a lot of these SEC teams that we'll talk about on Thursday where we'll know a lot more about them on Thursday, but I think Florida's a big one of that. Obviously, Liam Peterson, which, by the way, I have a pretty good source that says he saw Q's tweet, by the way.
Oh, I know. Q got told that too.
But, everything's good down in Gainesville, obviously Miami. We'll kind of breeze through some of these other ones. Missouri dominates New Haven again. I said Friday that would be the most embarrassing loss. Looking back with how Missouri played, I still stand by that would have been a really embarrassing loss. Oklahoma obviously rolled through Coppin State. Coppin State's one of the worst Power 5 programs. Alabama swept Rhode Island, who is again winless. Vanderbilt again swept a winless Marist team. Georgia, I know that Samford kind of gave Alabama a little bit of fits during the midweek, but they roll. But I think the thing for me that I want to talk about with them is, what do you think of Trey Phelps' shoes? That kind of seems to be the biggest thing with Georgia.
the neon cleats.
Again, if that's the biggest issue with with Georgia's weekend is that Trey Phelps cleat color, I think that's kind of a sign of a good weekend.
I don't care if he's wearing flip flops. If he keeps hitting like he's hitting, he can march out there in whatever he wants.
Yeah, obviously Wes Johnson took a cheap shot as guys taking money from portals. Um, which brings up an interesting point to me because it seems like every single coach in the SEC now has said that don't come here if you're just about money. So it begs the question, what program do you think is getting guys that get money if all these SEC coaches are going out in public and saying we don't want guys that just want money?
I think we know the few answers to it. I'm not sure if we want to say them out loud, but yeah, I think we know the answers, and we see, at least I know I've seen from kind of some back end stuff about who's getting paid what. So there are 3 very specific teams kind of on that list, and rather not say it out loud and kind of reveal who I'm hearing it from.
And again, it's not Georgia, despite all the rumors with their portal. But I think for me, the thing that really jumped out about the Georgia Bulldogs this weekend was Colby Branch, the guy who's an old school transfer because he's been there for so long. You kind of almost forget he's on the team. He had a phenomenal weekend.
And we spent about 5 minutes talking about him on Thursday. So
I know
timing.
He's an insane talent that, again, I think people kind of forget about. Anything you want to add on Georgia before we move on?
It was good to see Volchko again with another great outing. We talked about he needs to be that guy, and it's so far so good against. And I would say, especially competition wise, I mean, Stetson is no slouch. Neither is Wright State offensively. So I think those are 2, like, they're obviously not SEC offenses you're facing, but those are 2 like top, I don't know, 100 to 150 offenses in the country. So it's still pretty good offenses to face off against. So that was very good to see. And Matt Scott, I didn't realize, because I hadn't seen video. I had heard about him having a good fall. I didn't realize that they had changed his release point.
Yeah, I know that was kind of surprising for me too.
Yeah, so his release point is 7 inches higher than it was. It looked, and I saw somebody compare it, and it looks the exact same as, like, it looks like Verlander's release point now, where he's getting more right on the fastball, and instead of his slider that he uses, I think his slider he uses like 38% of the time. Used to be more of like a frisbee type, and now it's got a lot more depth to it. From kind of it now, it's more like I would say, come from that 2 o'clock standpoint. So that was surprising to see, because that was the first time I'd actually seen him throw. And yeah, I mean that's a difference maker for them, and obviously another arm out of the portal.
Yeah, I think for me, I saw a tweet where they had those pitches overlaid with the slider and his fastball. And I don't, again, I know it's hard to hit in the SEC, but I don't know how you're supposed to hit those. Like, they both come out at very similar release points, and then the slider just dies and cuts really, really late. But I think for them, they're going to get Kenny Ishikawa back eventually, but it almost seems like he should just go back to being just a fielder with the outings that they got out of Volchko and Scott.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I still want to see, like, obviously, if he won the job to be a weekend rotation guy in the fall, it means he's obviously qualified to do it. So I still want to see it. And I would say make that decision halfway through the year or something. Let him get a couple. I would say at least a couple weekend starts. And if anything, like, he can be kind of that bullpen guy where it's like, okay, you bring him in for 2 or 3 innings in a tough situation, maybe especially Sunday when you might be light on some arms or something like that. But yeah, I think he's still got to be utilized. He's too good not to be, and just completely make him one way. But yeah, it's once they get healthy, they're feeding the trees again. Offense looks to be there. It just, I don't know. It's still a wait and see of it's going to repeat itself of when these arms start to collapse like they had the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think they really addressed that in the portal, and they really are trying to mitigate that problem that they've had. We'll group three teams in together, as it was 3 series that I thought were pretty underrated that ended up being not underrated at all. Arkansas sweeps Xavier, Missouri State gets swept by Ole Miss, and then Texas. I know that Michigan State kind of played them close for a little bit, but I think dominating is the right word for Texas against Michigan State. I guess for these 3 teams, what was the most surprising, I guess, outcome out of these 3 sweeps?
You know what? I'll go the Ole Miss pitching staff, because we talked about how high scoring this should be with what Missouri State has done historically, with how good they looked, especially offensively against Louisiana in week 1, and then to come into Swayze, which is known as an offensive ballpark, like, hitters love hitting there, and didn't put up a whole lot of runs. And surprisingly, their worst outing was Hunter Elliott. And then after Hunter Elliott, it was just nails. And that's obviously, you're not going to get that Hunter Elliott every weekend. Like, that's a guy who's proven that he can be trusted on Fridays. Like, know what you're going to get. I mean, you're going to get a quality start 75 to 80% of the time. So I would say from a surprise standpoint, I will go like if you made me pick like something like that, yeah, I'll go with the Ole Miss pitching staff. Was probably the highlight of those 3 series.
Yeah, the bullpen was phenomenal too down the stretch. I think for me it was that Xavier didn't steal a game from Arkansas. I felt like that's kind of been Arkansas's Achilles heel the past few years, is they'll dominate the series, but you'll kind of look up and it'll be like, oh yeah, they lost on Saturday or they lost on Sunday. And especially a program like Xavier that needs all the RPI that they can get, as they're probably going to be on the bubble like they are every single year, that you kind of thought that they were going to maybe try and steal one. The most unsurprising one for me is Texas. I felt like Louisville was
again. It's just, yeah.
It's weird because I said that I still feel like LSU's underrated. I still feel like the Texas arms are underrated despite being the consensus number one. Like, I was talking to one of the scouts in Round Rock that was also in town to see Texas. And we got talking about Thomas Burns, and he was like, yeah, he goes, it's crazy that Arizona State's Friday guy is now a bullpen arm for the Texas, and he's likely their best pitcher. Like, I'm going to get some advanced stats out this week on the staff, but the only thing that worries me, and it's probably the best problem to have, is all their starters go so deep into games that you don't really know how good their bullpen is. That's their biggest worry right now, in my opinion. And that might be the best problem to have in the country.
Yeah, that's not a huge worry. It's as long as and the starters, most of the innings are like the unstressful innings too. It's just they're just kind of mowing through people right now. This is a team, and unfortunately, with their schedule, we're not going to find anything more about, and we're not going to get those questions answered until SEC play starts.
Yeah, again, we'll probably talk about it more on Thursday, but they're probably not going to face Cam Flukie. That kind of has lost a little bit of its luster. But, or Ohio State, I don't really think is going to beat them or anything like that. But I think for me, and again, you never want to wish this, but you almost, if you're Max Weiner or Jim Schlossnagle, you want Ruger to get chased in the third or fourth. You want Luke Harrison to get chased early. I don't think Volantis is ever going to get chased early the way that he pitches.
No.
But that'd be the one thing for me, is just to kind of see if one of those will get chased early. One of the other ones, Texas A&M, they sweep I think a really high-quality Penn team. The bats disappeared for a ton of those games as they needed back-to-back walk-offs. One of them being an error double on Friday and then a walk-off walk. Do you feel more confident in the A&M staff having so many zeros and having an ERA at, I think it was 0.03 or 0.3? Or do you worry about the A&M bats? Because I know for me, it's kind of a glass half full, like the pitching. Like Aiden Sims on Sunday has been fantastic. The bullpen, I think, was kind of the biggest question mark. I think that's the one thing that I came away really kind of feeling good about A&M.
Yeah, so this is one of the series I watched every pitch of. Just kind of had an eye on it, and luckily it ended up being a really good series, and I think that's probably why I kept turning it back on Saturday and Sunday. And I don't know what to take out of the pitching staff, because watching a lot of those pin at bats, it just looked like a Northeast team who hadn't seen any pitching yet.
Yeah.
And they just were clearly overmatched. It just didn't, like, they weren't even comfortable competitive at bats most of the time. And I think that made a big part of it. I mean, we are 2 or 3 pitches away from talking about Texas A&M and Tennessee both lost 2 out of 3 this weekend. Like, if say that center fielder makes a good play, then we're going to the 11th. And so I think it was very concerning to see what the offense that we praised so highly last week, like, maybe is it a Tennessee Tech thing? Because the talent is obviously there, and we feel like the talent's there. Why weren't the results there this weekend? I know Hakopian's dealing with, he's obviously banged up and he was out. And so there's still.
Sorrell didn't play Sunday either.
Sunday, correct. And yeah, so
and Wesley Jordan didn't play either, who's been their best hitter.
But it feels like, and that's where we thought the depth, I don't know if, and maybe it's just like, it could just be a 1 week and one off. But when your guys are out, you expect the depth of that team or an offense like that to kind of take over, and they just didn't. It felt like it felt like one of those times where everybody just kept waiting on the next guy to get the big hit, and it just never came really. So yeah, I mean, there's concerns that can come out of this one. I think we said it coming into this weekend. There wasn't much, unless something crazy happened. There wasn't a whole lot we were going to be able to, like, I guess, take out of it. So that's kind of where I'm at on it. It's like they were close to losing 2 of these 3 games, and then we'd be having a totally different conversation.
Yeah, that's the one thing. They did play really good on Sunday, I should say, on getaway day. But yeah,
that was Penn. You could Penn ran out of arms. I mean, that's what, when you have a team like that, when you have extra inning game or one extra inning game, and then Friday was so tight, and you used like 6 arms on Friday to get that kind of 1-0 game. Yeah, once you come to Sunday and you put all your chips in the basket to win that game Friday or Saturday, yeah, you could tell they kind of ran out of bullets.
I'm really curious to see what they do with Sawyer Farr, who had, I think, a really good weekend. Hopefully they can get Hakopian back for this weekend, as we'll talk about it on Thursday. I think they got to get more from Bear Harrison behind the plate. But
yeah,
I think that this is one of those ones where we saw it a lot last year with Ole Miss after Arlington, where they didn't really play that good, but you were like, okay, like when we're talking about this in April or May, when they get into these SEC schedules, like no one's really going to remember other than that they swept Penn. And I think that this is one of those ones where I think a team like A&M last year, who was just one of the most, I think, unclutched teams ever, loses 2 or 3 this week. I think just keeping their confidence high is the most important thing for me more than anything.
Yeah, I can definitely see that reasoning. Especially, they didn't make any, like last year's team probably would have made a crucial error in like the top of the 9th to give up a run or something like that. I mean, looking at it, it was, I can't even remember, they made an error on Friday. I don't even remember when that one was.
I don't think they did, because they posted a graphic that they didn't.
Okay, so it says error Friday, none Saturday, and none Sunday. But so that is okay. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. That part is good compared to last year's team, who it does feel like they would have screwed something up and figured out a way to lose one of those 2 games.
Yep. 29 innings pitched, whip of under a half, no walks, 32 strikeouts. The no walks, I think, is a big one.
Yeah, that is a very big one.
We'll kind of keep this last one quick, as I think it was probably the biggest anomaly of the weekend for me. Kentucky takes 2 of 3 from University of Evansville. They get shut out on Sunday, 1-0. I can be honest, I didn't watch a single inning of any of this game.
Oh, I mean, that's my alma mater, baby.
So we'll leave it all to you for the expertise.
Yeah, it was. They were controlling the beginning innings for a little bit from Kenton Deverman, who's very. If you remember, Kenton Deverman was that freshman who dominated ECU in the regional 2 years ago as a true freshman. So he's a junior now. He actually threw fairly well against Kentucky. Just couldn't get any run support. The surprising thing is, and I'll say that is a big ballpark. It's playing there. Trust me, it was no fun, especially. And I played in the dead bat era too, in the dead ball era, excuse me, where it was disgusting to try to hit out there. It was very tough. Ball doesn't fly. So I get from that standpoint, but there really wasn't. It wasn't a huge, like, Kentucky scored based on, I think, like 4 or 5 home runs over the weekend that were 2-run shots, 3-run shots, and then they just didn't get that on Sunday. So it's kind of disappointing from an offensive standpoint to not score. But yeah, it also sort of felt like, okay, we won our series on the road. Let's get out of here and get back home type of Sunday a little bit.
Which, again, there's nothing wrong with that. Kentucky's not going to get any hate in the polls, I think, for that loss. They're going to be fine. Nick, that's all we have time for here. We're going to be back here Thursday. Probably going to be our longest show of the year, as we'll be talking all those tournaments. It's Prove It weekend for a ton of these SEC teams. I'm excited to talk about Thursday. I think this is probably the show that I've been most looking forward to, is this Thursday.
There are some big games next weekend. It's going to be a lot of fun.
See everybody on Thursday.